overview of what we're going to be doing today. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm just personally really excited for today's teaching because, I've been involved in organizing against Amazon for years now, and it's always a learning experience about the reach and the scope of harms that Amazon is enacting across our communities. And so we're going to start a bit about just giving some background of who For Us Not Amazon is and the way that our work has sort of developed over years. And then we're going to get into like the real focus of today's discussion, which will be a panel hearing from folks in different cities and different communities who are organizing around different issues, including environmental justice, housing justice, and then also making sure that we're fighting against policing and surveillance and criminalization of our communities. And so we'll hear from folks who will share from personal direct experience about what they're facing and combating, and then also some framing that'll be, bigger picture to make the links across the issues that we're facing. And then, like I said, from there, folks will have an opportunity to have, Q&A and some discussion amongst the panelists. And of course, we can't, do an event like this without giving y'all ways to plug in. So we'll also have some space for that for folks that want to participate. If you are local here in this area, Northern Virginia, there's definitely ways to connect. But also for folks who are in other areas, you'll also hear from different groups that we want to highlight their work and, of course, invite you all to participate wherever you are locally. And so now we can go on into sharing just I'm going to try to be brief, but unfortunately, Amazon's reach and attempts to take over our communities in this area have been vast. And so I'm going to try to condense a lot of information into a few minutes. But please, if anybody has any questions, again, you can also be dropping those in the chat. But we will get into more details in the panel section. So For Us Not Amazon, we're a coalition in Northern Virginia and DC for working people, migrants, and people of color against an Amazon takeover of our communities. And so we see here, there are some pictures from way back in the day, 2019. Some folks who are on this call are actually in these pictures and might remember some of these actions where we really started organizing and coming together in response to the announcement that Amazon has been planning to open its second headquarters in Arlington County, Virginia. And so through this process, we learned a lot about the ways that elected officials were unfortunately just falling in line with what Amazon wanted instead of listening to the demands and hopes that our communities have had of remaining in their communities and also combating surveillance that Amazon enacts. We can go to the next slide. And so these are just, again, a couple of examples of the ways that Amazon is harming our communities, but we will hear a little bit more. And I'm going to share first about housing. So we can go to the next slide. And this is, again, big picture stuff. We're going to hear more directly from tenants in a bit who are organizing directly against these threats. But with the announcement that HQ2 made coming to Arlington County, Virginia to open their second headquarters, they announced that along with that, they would be bringing an estimated 25,000 workers to work at their corporate office with an average income of $150,000 per year, which is huge discrepancy between what our families that we organize with have been, of course, been able, like they can't survive under conditions like this when there's an influx of even higher incomes in the community. And then organizations such as African Communities Together, Tenants and Workers, and ACE Collaborative, along with many of the coalition members, have been speaking out against the threats of displacement. We've seen examples of like local grocery stores that have been longtime staples of the community, been pushed out. And then now the same grocery store that was pushed miles away from Arlington County is now has a new neighbor called the Fresh Amazon Fresh grocery store. So slowly but surely, these threats keep popping up. Next slide. We've also seen in this area the threats of police and ICE surveillance that is strengthened by Amazon's technology. In 2019, Amazon and Arlington Police were discussing a potential partnership with Ring, which is cameras that would give access to the police department, access to camera recording through the Neighbors app that Amazon uses. But fortunately, we organized and we won to stop this agreement. But we do know that there are other agreements already in action in Prince William County and Alexandria. But there is also what Amazon is calling a quote unquote regional security council, which they are trying to develop partnerships with local police agencies to protect their whatever they want to protect. And so that's another bit of information that we are trying to understand locally about what Amazon is trying to do in our region. Next slide. And then just a couple more points that I want to share just as brief background to what we have been facing in this area in terms of Amazon's presence, that our elected officials also have committed hundreds of millions of dollars in public subsidies to Amazon. Again, one of the wealthiest corporations in the world, owned by Bezos, who, as we know, is a multi-billionaire, right? And Arlington County has promised Amazon $51 million in subsidies for its second headquarters. And the state of Virginia also promised Amazon $750 million in subsidies after, in 2019, whenever this was debated at the state legislature, they voted and decided this vote in 9 minutes. So they decided to give away $750 million of our public funds that could be going toward public education, ensuring that our schools are fully funded, that could be going to ensure that there are anti-displacement funds and actually quality guaranteed housing for all, that could be going to protecting our environment. Instead, it was given to this corporation as subsidies. And during the pandemic, of course, we've also made a lot of connections with our communities as to the ways that the state has failed our communities in the support that we've needed. But is in fact, they have funneled hundreds of millions of dollars to corporations like Amazon. I think we have one more example that I just want to share as well. This is just a quick snapshot of the amounts of money that Virginia has already committed to Amazon in subsidies. So nearly $1 billion, right? And this is as of 2022. But we know that there are a lot of more undisclosed amounts that unfortunately is not fully accessible to the public. And one more, I believe. There we go. And this is just one more example of the ways that Amazon has tried to creep into our region. There was a motion to even name an auditorium at the DC Public Library, at the MLK Library in DC, to name an auditorium after Bezos. And so because local organizers in DC, including Harriet's Wildest Dreams and other organizations, mobilized and responded, that was canceled. But from the very systemic and structural ways that they're colluding with government officials to try to take over our communities, to even things like this, we've really seen Amazon try to increase its reach in a whole range of ways in our region. And so I tried, like I said, I tried to condense a lot of information in just a few minutes to give folks a little bit of a background of what it is that we've been facing here in this region in Northern Virginia and in DC. But we know it's not just us, right? And we know it's not just these issues. There's a lot more. And so that's what we're going to get into today. And I'm very excited for this next section in our program, where we're going to be hearing from different speakers from different parts of the country and with different experiences to share how they are organizing against Amazon and fighting for communities where we're all truly protected and have the right to determine for ourselves what it is that we need to live and thrive. And so now I'm going to just one quick reminder to our panelists who I'm going to introduce right now. Please, whenever you come on, you can introduce yourself, just your name, pronouns, and organization. And then also to speak slowly, right? Because we do have interpretation. And so if for some reason you are going too fast, you might see messages in the chat. You might hear me jump in to try to remind you. So just a quick heads up about that. And then if you have slides, I know a couple of speakers have a couple images they'll show. So just reminders that you'll be sharing those yourself. And now, very excited. We're gonna hear, the way that this will work is we're gonna hear from a couple of people to talk about housing. First, we're gonna hear from Ester Nuñez, who is a tenant an organizer in Arlington County with La ColectiVA, and then also an organizer with La ColectiVA Luz. Following them, we'll hear from Howard, who is with Puget Soundstage, who will be sharing about in Seattle and Seattle area, the ways that Amazon has impacted housing in that area. So I'll pass it over to Ester and Luz.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Adelante.
Good afternoon. Go ahead, Esther. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ester Nuñez. I live here in Arlington, Virginia, and I am the tenant of the Barcos and La ColectiVA. And I've been meeting with folks from La ColectiVA for more than a year now. I met the people from La ColectiVA when they knocked on my door to ask me if I knew that the Barcroft apartments where I live had changed owners. And I said no. So they explained to me the issue that's going on, and I decided to join them to receive more information, and information that I didn't have and that they provided me. And that's how I joined La ColectiVA, and I'm part of the Barcroft group. I've met many times with La ColectiVA, and I have gone with them to different parts of the county. Every time I've been invited to. And in terms of the issue that we have here with the Barcroft apartments, is I've asked a lot of questions. Most of them have left unanswered, and I move forward and I fight on with La ColectiVA, trying to deal with the issue here with the apartments and the change of owners, and that Amazon lent money so the new owner would buy the apartments. And supposedly, he says we're not going to be displaced, but there's been some things going on, and I am very worried, and I'm a little bit scared of being displaced, because the last time we went to the county with La ColectiVA folks, I asked, they say that they're going to renew these apartments and that they're going to send us to a different location while they remodel them, and that to come back, some people will be eligible and some will not. So that has me worried. And I asked the question, but they didn't answer my question. And in terms of the increase of rent and other situations that are worrisome, they say they're not going to displace us, but with what they're doing, I feel and I think that it's a way for us to leave. They're not going to tell us leave, but with all these issues, I think we're going to have to go where, see where we can go, because that's what it seems like. And that has me really worried. And in terms of the meetings that I've had with La Colectiva, as I said before, we have gone many times to the county, we have presented our demands, um, as well as other ones that we still are pending. The main demand that we have here at the apartments complex is that us, the tenant group, is that we want to be part of all the decision making that the owner of the apartments are doing, that they take us into consideration, that we get notified on decision making, that they should notify us as a group. I would like that. That they take into consideration the tenant group. And
I would like to invite everyone who is here at the meeting that are part of FUNA, and that to join us, so you can knock doors with us and explain to other people the issue that we're having, because there's many people that have not found out information because either they don't have time sometimes or they're out at work. And it would be good that the majority of those of us, that those who are here in this meeting will support us and help us, because between all of us, and the county may listen to us and they may know what's the problem that we have. And you also, the county is supposed to help us because the county gave money to the new owner to buy these apartments. So Amazon and the county put that money. So I would like that you all support us in our fight, and that you join FUNA, and that way we can explain to the majority of the tenants that live here, so they find out what is going on. And when then they feel desperate, or when they realize that the rent is going to go up a lot due to what I commented earlier, that they want to get us out of here to renovate the apartments. And what I said before about some of us will be eligible and some of us will not. I don't understand that. So I would like to know what they mean by that. Because if it's about the time that we have lived here, for example, I don't know if I will qualify or not, or maybe they will kick me out because of that. So again, that has me worried. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I am here for anything that you need me. And I hope to count with you in if I ever have any questions, or if you can help me solve any of this in the future. Thank you. See, thank you so much, Esrer, for sharing with us.
Very brief, just so we can keep on our time. Um, but just for a brief more context on Barcroft, so Barcroft was bought in December of 2021 with finance from Arlington County with $150 million public funds and $160 million from the Amazon Equity Fund. And just for some quick context on the Amazon Equity Fund, 94% of the fund is actual like loans and 6% are grants. But the equity fund doesn't help the community. It helps like the rich, the developers that already have companies or firms. So then they get that, they get those loans. And the ones who pay them are the community at the same time that they're being forced out. But just to quickly context on what's going on locally, in the year 2022, in March, there's a community, Columbia Gardens, got displaced. And this is already an Amazon effect because although the community of Columbia Gardens apartments wasn't purchased or financed by the Housing Equity Fund, it is down the street from Barcroft. I'm from Crystal City. So we're already seeing that developers are selling their properties, and now they have built townhouses that are like $1 million each. And this were 60 families that were displaced, and also the rent has increased within this year. We worked with the community in Arlington, and it has gone from $100 to $500 up just in 1 year. So this is why it's so urgent that we take action and really help so that there won't be displacement, or if not, this community is gonna be pushed out. So I think that's it for me. I'll pass it on to Danny to introduce the next panelist. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Esther y Luz, por compartir el ejemplo.
Thank you so much, Ester y Luz, for sharing an example of what's happening here in Arlington, in the North region of Virginia. And I'm going to pass it on to Howard, who is in Washington, where the first Amazon headquarters are, and can talk about the impact that they felt during this time and draw the connections with the larger scale of the effects of this housing situation with Amazon.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel, and it's been great to be with you all. I am speaking from the unceded lands of the Coast Salish and Duwamish peoples, who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. That's the Seattle region in the northwest part of Washington state. I'm the director of Puget Sound SAGE, and I use he, him pronouns. I've been at SAGE for about 15 years. SAGE builds community power to influence, lead, and govern in the Seattle region. We advocate for policy that makes racial and social equity a top goal for decision makers at all levels of government. For the past 15 years, SAGE has been fighting for and winning deep investments in affordable housing, anti-displacement of BIPOC communities, good jobs, and climate justice. I'm here to tell sort of the cautionary tale of when high tech comes to town. Amazon arrived in Seattle in the late 1990s, a very small startup in the shadow of Microsoft, which was already a tech giant. Microsoft, in fact, dominated employment and the geography of work for decades in our region, but located in a suburban area where there was a lot of room to grow. By the mid-2000s, Amazon was still starting up, selling books online that really no one here foresaw as our new tech giant. When I arrived in 2007 to Seattle, I came from California, Amazon had 2,000 workers and occupied buildings that were already here. They were already built. By 2019, they had grown to 55,000 tech and downtown service workers, all that in downtown Seattle and the surrounding areas. Another 10,000 are now located across Lake Washington in a smaller city called Bellevue. And as Amazon grew, Facebook, Google, Expedia, and others piled on, Seattle grew by nearly 100,000 people in this time period to about where we're at now at 750,000 total. This has had a massive impact on our city and region, and a massive impact on quality of life for anyone who doesn't have a high-tech salary. As we exploded with high-end jobs, there was not and still is not enough housing for everyone. Looking back in history, cities in the US have always grown in fits and spurts, and housing builders are usually behind that big growth. But when growth was in industrial and manufacturing jobs, housing was built for both working class people as well as managers. This happened in Seattle with the expansion of Boeing in the 50s and 60s, resulting in many new working class neighborhoods and suburbs in our region. The problem with high-tech companies, which are financed by almost unlimited global capital, is that they overload our local housing systems and become a force for displacing existing communities. The housing system in the US, our overall system, depends on housing that gets older, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and less expensive to ensure housing, that there's housing for lower income households as well. But when high tech comes to town, this doesn't work. The high paid workers take up both the new housing and the older housing because they can outbid everybody. Landlords respond to this by raising rents everywhere. Displacement then happens usually to BIPOC communities who typically live in older neighborhoods where housing is more affordable. Sometimes the displacement is direct by developers buying homes and tearing them down to build new, much more expensive housing. Sometimes it happens by landlords just raising the rents so high that people are forced to move to where it's more affordable. Sometimes it happens because cultural institutions and community serving businesses are forced to move out because they can't afford the rent or can't afford to buy overpriced land. And as Amazon grew, there was a rush by our local elected officials to get on the train and support new office development in downtown. Developers put dozens of cranes in the sky for over a decade. They were quick to cozy up to Amazon. And the biggest developer that was Amazon's partner was a former Microsoft executive. At the same time, our elected officials were not paying attention to how all the new high-tech workers were gentrifying our neighborhoods until it was really too late. We still fight on, but we are behind, and thousands of BIPOC households, lower income, working class folks have been displaced to the suburbs. And now those same people are being displaced even further out as the near suburbs are gentrifying. We have some good news. Amazon can be beat. A couple of victories, Sage and many other organizations came together to fight to tax Amazon in Seattle, and we won a payroll tax on high-tech workers a few years ago that generates $250 million a year for affordable housing and climate justice. We also won inclusionary housing about 5 years ago, although it's not a model policy, but it is something. We fought for and won an equitable development initiative that provides $20 million a year to BIPOC-led community organizations to develop their own housing, small businesses, and cultural spaces. And we also have some examples of how Seattle is using, like nonprofits in Seattle are using the Amazon's Housing Equity Fund in ways that are not displacing existing tenants, which I can share either in questions or at some other time. And my main message is, these massive tech corporations trample all over everyone. But when communities come together and rise up, they can be beat. I have many other stories as well.
Thank you so much, Howard. And thank you, Luz and Ester, for sharing about the work for housing justice to keep our communities where we want to choose to live, and to fight against displacement that Amazon and its partners are fueling. And with that, if folks can, I see some love happening in the reactions. If folks want to give some little clap emojis, go for it, please. We're in a virtual space, so all the energy, even emoji energy, is appreciated. So thank you all so much. Now we're going to go on to our next couple of speakers who will be sharing about environmental justice and the ways that Amazon is impacting locally, and then also the different scales and different communities. We're going to start off with Natalie. And then we're gonna shift, and then after Natalie will be Andrea.
Thank you. Let me try to get my share screen going properly. Oh. Okay, thank you. My name is Natalie Pien. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I live in Leesburg, Virginia, in the unceded Manahoac Territory. I have the privilege of serving on the boards of directors for the Piedmont Environmental Council and the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. This evening, I will share my thoughts on the environmental impact of data centers, as well as many other negative impacts. My presentation includes my own work, as well as work by Piedmont Environmental Council's Julie Bolthouse. The picture on this first slide is Amazon's data center near Dulles Airport in Loudoun County, Virginia. Let's begin. First, we'll start with the basics. This is a typical data center with diesel backup generators and diesel fuel storage tanks. Data centers do a lot. Your electronic device, whether it's a cell phone, tablet, or computer, serves more as a portal to the functions performed at data centers. Data centers have multiple negative impacts, ranging from environmental to economic, and many in between. Let's start with local environmental impacts. Land consumption. This is an aerial photo of Data Center Alley. In the top left corner is a residential subdivision. It is dwarfed by data center buildings. Next, data centers use a tremendous amount of water, primarily to cool equipment. Today, Loudoun Water has a reclaimed recycled water program for businesses. About 50 of the over 115 data centers participate. In 2022, Loudoun Water delivered 682 million gallons of reclaimed water to data centers, thereby conserving Loudoun drinking water sources. Remember those diesel backup generators? This picture shows industrial scale generators used for emergency power. To make sure they work in an emergency, diesel generators need to be turned on for short weekly and for longer monthly test runs. While testing, air pollutants such as ozone precursors and fine particulates are released. Ozone causes asthma attacks. As for fine particulates, there is no safe lower limit. Fine particulates accumulate in their lungs and can cross from lungs to the bloodstream, causing lung and heart disease. Earlier this spring, there was a proposal to relax air pollution permits to allow Loudoun data centers to run 24/7 on diesel backup generators. And of course, diesel backup generators require diesel fuel storage tanks. Fuel storage tanks require filling up, and diesel fuel spills pollute soil and groundwater by infiltrating downwards, as well as pollute streams by stormwater runoff. Now, let's talk about Amazon's impact. Between 2011 and 2021, Amazon spent $52 billion on Virginia data centers. In January 2023, Governor Youngkin announced Amazon's commitment to spend an additional $38 billion to develop data centers in Virginia. So that's $87 billion total, and we're in the middle of that development. According to Insider's August 16th, 2023 article, Amazon built a data center empire in Northern Virginia. Exclusive filings reveal it's using as much energy as a major city. Emergency backup generators can produce 2.7 gigawatts of power, enough to power half of New York City and 35% more to power Amazon's hometown, Seattle. The Amazon website claims that 90% of the electricity it consumed in 2022 was renewably generated. Yet, its provider, Dominion Energy, generates less than 10% of its electricity from renewable sources of energy. Virginia is in the PJM, Regional Transmission Organization, that coordinates movement of electricity in 13 states and the District of Columbia. PJM's forecast graph for the Dominion Zone shows in blue the 2023 forecast for a summer peak load, and is much greater than its green 2022 projection. Dominion attributes the increase due to data center growth. For each year, Dominion Power creates an Integrated Resource Plan, IRP, to show how it will provide electricity. This 2023 IRP summary tables shows 5 options, Plan A, B, C, D, and E, and each with the cost and planet warming carbon pollution. What's wrong with it? First, it violates the Virginia Clean Economy Act law, which mandates reductions in carbon pollution so that by 2050, Virginia will have 100% clean, carbon pollution-free electricity. Yet this IRP increases carbon pollution, does not retire coal plants per the previous 2022 IRP, and adds new carbon polluting power plants. SMRs are today's revival of nuclear reactors. Safety concerns are raised because safe storage of nuclear waste generated by SMRs has not been solved. Finally, the cost of each option is over $100 billion. It will be paid for by every Dominion customer on every monthly bill. Data centers are operated by private, for-profit corporations. Do you think it's okay for Virginians to pay for, subsidize plans that benefit private corporations? Use the Who's My Legislator website for federal and state legislators. Don't forget County Board of Supervisors or town councils. Data center approvals are made at the local level. Give your state legislators a to-do list that includes these 3 items: comprehensive data center study, regional review board, grid impact statement. Counties and towns make the final land use decisions, including data center approvals. Clearly, business as usual cannot continue. The Sierra Club wrote a data center development recommendations that should be incorporated into the data center application process and approval process. Please make sure your locality has good regulations. Thank you for allowing me to talk about data centers. I hope you will take action to help data centers become part of the solution, not part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Really appreciate hearing from the work that you and others are doing around data centers. Now I'll pass it over to Andrea, who will be sharing from the People's Collective for Environmental Justice.
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Let me make sure I can get this going in. Can you see this?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Hey, everybody. My name is Andrea Vidaurre. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with an organization called the People's Collective for Environmental Justice. We are a community-based organization out of what's called the Inland Empire of Southern California. So we're about an hour east of LA, in the semi-rural area between LA and the desert. We're also a place where there is the largest concentration of Amazon warehouses in the entire country. There's upwards of 30 fulfillment and sortation centers. Now, although we don't have data centers like I understand there to be in Virginia, we do have another part of the Amazon kind of supply chain, which is basically the boxes that store and move all of the stuff that people order online before they get to your door. So those data centers are basically helping process everyone that's on the internet. And then whatever they choose and put on their shopping cart then goes from either another country or wherever it's coming from on a truck or a train or an airplane, and it comes into one of these warehouses. And then most likely it goes to another warehouse, and then eventually gets to your doorstep. Now, why is this an issue, right? These big boxes, although they just look like these big white boxes of slate, are actually extremely impactful to people that live next to them. I showed some of these pictures of some of the probably what's becoming the new normal in not only in places like where I live, but also in places all around the country. This is the type of business model that Amazon is trying to create all around the country so that people can have same day delivery. Now, same day, next day delivery doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It happens out of a cost. And this is one of the costs. And so on any given day, one of these warehouses that you see here could have about 1,000 diesel trucks that come in and out of it every single day. And if you have a concentration of, like over here on my right-hand side here in Miraloma, Jurupa Valley area, in this area where there is at least 10 major warehouses, you can have like 10,000 diesel trucks driving in through this area. This specific community here has an air filter that our air district does not include when they look at the medium average of air quality, because it always ranks so high. It's always such an outlier because the pollution levels are so high in an area like this. Because what do you have when you have thousands of diesel trucks coming in? You have super high levels of ozone, super high levels of PM 2.5, which translates into people having to use oxygen machines, people having asthma, having a tough time breathing in the short term, and in the long term, developing things like cancer and other respiratory issues that literally keep people from doing the things in their lives. Like we talk to high school students that are like, I can't run track and field because the air is so bad, because I start choking and I have to hold an inhaler. Or I can't pursue something in sports because my environment is too hard to breathe in. Or I'm not going to even think about going after this in my life because I know my body's not going to be able to take it, right? There's these intergenerational impacts of air quality that we're living through every single day because companies choose to not clean up and use technology that exists to clean up their operations. But outside of trucking, you also have things such as traffic, noise, housing displacement. So in these pictures right here, this is where the warehouses are coming into, but in certain other neighborhoods, you have warehouses displacing upwards of like thousands of families at a time. The developers, going in with the county, I felt a lot from hearing Ester talk earlier, because I was like, that's exactly what happens here. Developers and city officials collude together, they rezone the land, and then they allow for developers to come in and kick people out. And then tenants and renters are left with nothing, right? And so that's also the impact of warehousing that it has. And then also the big part about this is that we are the least beneficial of the system. So the map on the right is where all of the now it's kind of an old study. It's gotten worse, but all of the warehouses are those big dots. And the places that are in yellow are the people that shop the least from Amazon. And the places that are red are the people that shop the most from Amazon. So you'll see that the people that shop the most from Amazon are the ones that live farthest away from its actual pollution sources. You'll see that actually the people that probably shop the least, maybe once or twice a week on Amazon, or maybe even less, are the ones that have to deal with the truck or the train or the airplane rolling back, polluting their environment every single day. While a person that lives on the coast, off of Beverly Hills or in LA or in another like affluent white community doesn't even know what a warehouse looks like, doesn't even know what a diesel truck looks like. And I say this because, this is environmental racism. And there have been studies that in community, like Amazon specifically goes into communities of color where there are more residents of color, more low-income residents, and that's where they decide to place these parts of their supply chain in, where they put their business model in. And I bring this all up because, this is the other side of the impact of Amazon that it has on the environment, like the environmental racist impact. But then also the other part is that we're talking about climate change, right? We're talking about climate change. We're talking about how the planet is burning. Everybody here, I'm sure, has heard about the wildfires, the floodings, the natural disasters, people having to run from and escape their home countries because of climate change, and having to be displaced to other places because of climate change, and people getting sick because of climate change. But what you have is companies not actually taking action. So when we talk about pollution, we're also talking about what's contributing to climate change, because it's the exact same thing. And companies like Amazon are on this path towards doing business as usual, which is that red line there, but they're claiming to do this pledge around climate change to know we're going to go net zero, we're going to electrify this, we think, we're going to stop growing data centers, we think, all these promises, right? But that's not actually what's happening on the ground, right? Business as usual is that this company is continuing to grow. This company is continuing to approve data centers in other countries, even though they know that there's not enough renewable energy for them. Instead, they're growing and saying, we're going to have to actually frack more. We might have to actually support some more gas pipelines. All of that is contributing to the heating of the planet, while this company actually makes a bunch of secret steps back against doing anything around the climate. And so I bring this up because the same fight in the Inland Empire, I think, is the same one in Virginia. And I think we're all involved in this global fight around climate change. And we are interlinked through this company that is in our backyards, that we are trying to get more control of, right? So I'll end it there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. We really appreciate hearing from you and Natalie around the fight for environmental justice. And we are going to now transition into the point around policing and surveillance, just another way that Amazon harms our communities. And first, we'll be hearing from Alex, who will share its direct experience with the types of technologies that police use to criminalize our folks. And then from there, we will hear from Myaisha of MediaJustice. Alex, are you there? It looks like, oh, there's Alex, right? Alex, you're on mute. Alex, ¿me oyes? ¿Estás ahí?
Yep, I'm here.
Ok, compa, te toca.
Okay. Okay, my name is Alex from ColectiVA. I'm gonna share to you guys incidents that I have with Arlington County Police. A few years ago, I have arrested for a traffic violation on Arlington County for the police. They profiled me because I was Spanish, because I was Latino. They just arrest me because my complexion, right? So they call it ICE. They call
Alex, se te cortó el audio. No te escuchamos.
Alex, your audio got cut off. We can't hear you.
Have lost Alex. I know he was having some issues with connection earlier. And so if he is able to come back, we will hear from him. And in the meantime, though, I will move to Myaisha, if that's okay. And then hopefully Alex can reconnect and then we'll hear from him.
Sounds good. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. All right. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Myaisha Hayes. I'm the Campaign Strategies Director at MediaJustice. We're a national organization fighting to advance the communication and digital rights of communities of color. One of the major campaign or issue areas that we lead on is around criminalization. And so what I came here to share a little bit more about is just how Amazon has an extensive network of surveillance partnerships with the police, prisons, and military. And I'll try to cover as much ground as I can. But what I hope to convey to everyone here is just how much Amazon plays as a key factor in providing the technological infrastructure of the carceral system at pretty much every corner. So just to give a little bit of background, we got involved in the fight against Amazon many years ago because we were fighting for local bans against facial recognition technology. There's been so many studies, articles, even documentaries about facial recognition technology. So I apologize if this is, information that folks already know. But for those who are a little bit more unfamiliar with this technology, some of the major concerns that we had at the time and continue to have is the fact that this technology is biased. There's been countless studies that have been published warning the public that facial recognition technology was prone to misidentifying the faces of Black and Brown people, women, and gender nonconforming folks. And these kinds of errors with the technology lead to false arrests, which just puts us at further risk of the sort of dangerous or potentially deadly interactions that you would have with law enforcement. So at the time, public officials and or tough on crime public officials and the police wanted us to look past the inaccuracies, because once this technology is fixed, it'll be a valuable tool in keeping our communities safe. But the issue here is that safe communities have adequate and affordable housing. Safe communities have access to clean water. Safe communities have access to healthy foods and resourced public schools. Facial recognition doesn't create that safety. Facial recognition technology just digitizes the kind of racial profiling that our communities have continued to experience from law enforcement. And I think another point worth mentioning here is that when you're living in a political climate where Trump is president and you're seeing the rise of fascism, this is the kind of technology that can empower the government to watch where you protest, watch where you pray or worship, watch which clinics you go to for your reproductive care, right? So as we were engaging in these local fights, we were learning along the way that it wasn't just the police and the tough on crime public officials that were in our way or standing in opposition. It was also tech companies like Amazon that were selling this technology to thousands of police departments across the country, and doing things to really undermine our efforts, like pushing forth bills that would regulate, or even discrediting the research that had came out proving the dangers of this technology. And so I think for us, it really just unearthed, again, how much of a key player Amazon is in these conversations about policing, in these conversations about public safety, but just also revealed their ruthless investment in providing the state with the tools to fuel state violence, war, and criminalization. And it's not just facial recognition. It's not just the police that are using Amazon surveillance technology. It's also your neighbors and people in your community as well. There are millions of people using Amazon Ring, the home surveillance doorbell system that gives police departments access to your video footage captured by those cameras. There are at least 2,000 of these sort of police Amazon Ring partnerships, making this the largest public-private surveillance network we've ever seen. And I'm saying at least intentionally because these numbers are literally always growing. For many years, Amazon would say that they don't share user footage without user consent, but we, learned last summer that they were lying about that, and other panelists alluded to the fact that Amazon continues to lie and doesn't keep their promises. And due to the amount of public criticism and investigations into Amazon Ring, they have made certain tweaks to how the police can access Ring footage. So instead of requesting footage directly from the user, they can post a request for help. However, we still don't actually really know how much Ring footage the police have access to. They used to publish reports about how many legal orders they were receiving, but those reports never actually published the amount of videos that they were just sharing voluntarily. And they also just stopped publishing these reports altogether. I think I'm going to also touch on Amazon Web Services, which connects to the data center issue. So Amazon hosts, 1/3 of our internet infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. You might have interacted with the cloud when you've gone to a restaurant and scanned the QR code for the menu, and Amazon Web Services appears there. But if you've used Netflix or Uber, those are companies that also do business with Amazon Web Services. It's basically a data storage mechanism, right? And so all of the data that they're collecting through these surveillance tools are being hosted on these devices, on Amazon Web Services, which is why I wanted to mention it here, because even when we've led campaigns against other surveillance tools like automated license plate readers, which is manufactured and sold by Flock Safety, or supported our allies in their fights against ShotSpotter, which produces, gunshot detection technology. At some point or another, these companies are doing business with Amazon Web Services to host, their data. And Amazon Web Services also provides analytics technology, so that they have, by using machine learning and AI, they're able to help companies or, the government organize this data, sift through this data, make sense of this data. And then, there's also the contracts that Amazon Web Services has with the Department of Homeland Security through this program called HEART, where they aggregate, iris scans, fingerprints, voice prints, DNA, and other really sensitive information into their tracking system to basically just supercharge raids and detention and deportation. So while these tools really operate in a lot of different ways, they fundamentally have the same impact on our communities. It's just expanding surveillance, criminalization that we are already experiencing by law enforcement. And I think to touch on just the like bigger impact of all of this is that I feel like we're really witnessing a company that believes it's too big, too powerful to be regulated, to feel constrained by any laws or public scrutiny, right? This is a company that really wants to write its own rules and govern themselves to allow their business to continue to grow. But as Amazon continues to grow, we're seeing the devastating impacts on our environment, on workers, worker protection and rights, and then of course the expansion of the police state that's using Amazon surveillance technology to fuel criminalization and deportation.
Muchísimas gracias, Myaisha, por compartir el contexto.
Thank you, Myaisha, for sharing the very key context of how Amazon utilizes its mechanism, its technologies for the military, police, and ICE agency to criminalize our communities. Now, I would like to go back and see if Alex is back. And I see that he is back. Alex, do you hear me? Yes, I hear you. So if you could share briefly, how was the situation that you started explaining and the parts of technology that you experienced in that situation?
Okay, yeah, my name is Alex again for our La ColectiVA, and I was telling you guys about my arrested for Arlington County. I have a arrested for Arlington County police for the crash. I have an accident in my car, so I have approached for two white folks, and then they told me that I was Hispanic. So basically, I was a target. So they told me they have to wait there. They hang me up. They put me on the floor. Then they call in immigration. So immigration come and approach me, and they have a technology that Amazon provide to. They can track us, or they can track. It's related to track immigrant people, or it's related to track like who whatever person buy from them and provide information to police department in Arlington, and basically is clearly they provide information for Homeland Security. So what I can say is that we need to just go against that. They can stop doing that because they violated our rights. Because we can not buy something from them, and they're going to use all the information they have from us against us. So basically, I would love to everybody's just stand up, and we can go. I know we are the minority, but we can go against that because our personal information is not going to be safe anymore. Like they buying and buying and buying a lot of like properties to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the whole community, whole Spanish community, Black community are on because that's, I think that's not a right thing they doing that, but we love we need to push so they can definitely stop doing that. My case was really like weird case because I was not a target for immigration. The Arlington County have a technology from them. They can track you. They can track you to see like if you are immigrant, if you have papers or not. They was asking me if I was a gang member. They was asking me where I was came from, like if I'm stayed there or no. And then they call eyes on me. So let's go ahead and stop. They can stop doing that, and we cannot support in that type of situations in our community anymore.
Thank you so much, Alex. And folks can, send some love to Alex and some applause as well. Alex has been a leader in our work here locally for years now, since he and his partner started organizing with us around his case. Like he said, he was pulled over. Well, I mean, not even pulled over. The local police department responded to a fender bender where he was hit by somebody else. And then after criminalizing him, and they called ICE on him. And like he shared, right, they used different types of technologies, including databases, to try to make allegations against him. They pulled him on the street and took pictures of him. And he also feels that there was other technologies used around trying to do like recognition of who he was, things like that. And this is, again, tech weapons really that are hosted by Amazon and other corporations like them, right? And so thank you so much, Alex, for sharing, and everyone else who had contributions to today's panel. We have like about 10 minutes left today. So we're a little bit low on time, but if folks do have some, like a question or two, we do have, we can do that. And so I wanted to check with folks who are attending if anybody had questions. I see, there's been a lot of great activity and comments in the chat. So thank you all so much for engaging in that way. But yeah, does anybody have any questions? And it's okay if not. I'm also curious, like if one of the panelists had another question or reaction to what somebody else shared, please feel free to jump in. And curious, yeah, if anybody else had wanting something to add. Ester, si veo su mano levantada.
I'll add something just real quick. Since everything's connected, everything is related. And that's a big takeaway I heard. And I was really pleased to hear all the successes that Howard reported. So that's very encouraging to each of us. So thank you, Howard. And thank you for the great panel presentations.
Gracias, Natalie. Esther, ¿usted quiere comentar? Tiene la mano levantada. Sí.
Esther, did you want to say something? Yes. More than just commenting, I just want to remind y'all to please sign the petition. I just saw that Luz was sharing the link in the chat, so you can make sure to sign that. I forgot when it was my turn to expose or to share what that I wanted to say. I forgot to say that, but please make sure to sign the petition. Luz shared the link. Thank you so much. That's all.
Gracias, Esther.
Thank you, Esther.
Anybody else? Also, if there are other additional calls to action, folks can feel free to share those out with folks as well. And if not, that's perfectly great. I feel like there was a lot of information that we all received today, a lot of knowledge and like folks' experience. I just wanted to, like there were some themes that I heard in the different presentations. One thing that I heard was in various examples, there were things happening without our knowledge, right? There were things happening where politicians were negotiating with Amazon and behind closed doors, and these were deals, and these are deals that are affecting so many of us and harming us, so many of us. Meanwhile, we've been left out, right? And so there is something there that really needs to change, that to really achieve self-determination is a clear need. And a lot of these elected officials are in our way. And so we need to recognize that as well. There were also a couple of things where I heard, I didn't even know Amazon was involved in this thing, and so that is another aspect of why we did this teach-in, right? As Natalie so clearly mentioned, all of it is connected, right? And we also know that we shouldn't be surprised at this point if Amazon is involved in some other issue, right? And that's the reality, that it is a it's a monopoly, right, that is harming us in very many ways and is trying to actually expand and creep into more parts of our lives. I see a message in the chat that somebody can't hear me. Are others who are listening in Spanish having any issues, or is the interpretation okay? ¿Hay alguien más?
Anyone else?
If Luz, can you do me a favor and just check the Spanish channel? That would be really great. I just want to make sure that folks are able to hear us. And so I'm just checking. Margarita, can you hear us now? Maybe not. I'm gonna ask, like, Luz, if you can. Okay, thank you so much, Luz. So Luz is gonna help check. And then I also wanted to just mention one more thing, which is that there are a lot of false promises that I also heard that we have to keep tracking and seeing, calling out the lies, right? Including, you know, they made a climate pledge, but we know that they're still doing business as usual, as Andrea showed us, right? They said that they made tweaks to can police access footage through Ring cameras, but they're still actively expanding partnerships with more and more police departments, right? And still, you know, there have been clear examples of Amazon providing police access to footage. You know, the what housing equity fund, that was truly a response to community demands for years and years, calling out the displacement that Amazon is fueling. And at the same time, they're still mostly doing loans, right? Still making money in the back end from the quote unquote response that they've created to these issues that they're creating, right? And fueling. And so that's another, I think, another theme that I heard in today's presentations. So it's an invitation for all of us, right? To really get involved. And whether you're organizing in environmental justice, housing justice, migrant rights, anti-surveillance work, et cetera, we are all in the same fight for collective liberation. And Amazon is an ongoing threat. And so we encourage folks to either get linked up if you're here in this region, Northern Virginia, with the canvassing efforts, right? Or with the sign the petition, et cetera. If you're in Cali, you know, hit up People's Collective for Environmental Justice, hit up folks at Sage, right? If you're in that region, and there are partners all across this area and the country that are doing work against Amazon and fighting for our community. So please join us and we'll be on the lookout for follow-up information and email in the coming days. If we can just show the last slide, Jack, that'd be great. Just want to make sure that, yeah, we can list out all the organizations that have helped out with today. I may have missed some, so thank you for Us Not Amazon, La ColectiVA, Virginia Student Power Network, Surge Northern Virginia, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, the Piedmont Environmental Council, People's Collective for Environmental Justice, Puget Soundstage, MediaJustice, Athena, and more. And of course, thank you so much to the Access teams, interpreters, folks who make these spaces truly as accessible as we can for folks, and all of you who joined us this evening. We really appreciate it, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Bye-bye.